In the sterile hum of an airport terminal, where systems hum with efficiency and prejudice, a black woman's quiet dignity unraveled an airline's empire. Kenna Brooks, a fiduciary auditor with the power to halt a $4 billion merger, was dragged from her first-class seat without cause, her silence louder than any protest. What followed was not just a financial collapse, but a seismic reckoning with a culture that dismissed her. This is the story of one woman's composure, a mirror held to a flawed system, and an emotional awakening that reshaped an industry, proving that true power speaks in stillness. The jet's wheels kissed the tarmac at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport, the cabin still vibrating with the hum of descent. First-class passengers adjusted their watches, ready to disembark, but a sudden tension pierced the air. Two security officers, their boots heavy on the carpeted aisle, marched toward seat 2A. Kenna Brooks sat there, a 38-year-old black woman in a navy hoodie and jeans, her posture calm, her tote bag resting on her lap. She wasn't shouting, wasn't moving, wasn't resisting. "Ma'am, you need to come with us," the taller officer said, his voice clipped. "Why?" Kenna asked, her tone even, her eyes steady. No answer came. The flight attendant, Sloan Carter, hovered nearby, avoiding Kenna's gaze. The co-pilot, stationed awkwardly by the cockpit, looked away. Passengers shrank into their seats, some whispering, "She probably snuck into first class." One muttered. In seconds, a narrative took root. The officers unbuckled Kenna's seatbelt, lifted her by the arms, and pulled her down the aisle. Her tote slipped to the floor, ignored. "You're making a mistake," she said softly, her voice cutting through the murmurs. No one listened. As they dragged her through the jet bridge, no one knew that Kenna Brooks held the veto power over Havenport Air's $4 billion merger with Genesis Holdings. By day's end, that mistake would cost the airline everything. 2 hours earlier, the terminal was a quiet hum of early morning travelers. Kenna arrived at gate C41, her sneakers silent on the polished floor, her hoodie bearing the faded word Howard. She blended in, deliberately unremarkable, a skill honed over years of navigating spaces that questioned her presence. As a fiduciary auditor for Juno Equity Holdings, Kenna was no stranger to power, but she wielded it quietly. Her role in the airline's merger audit kept confidential. Her boarding pass, scanned for first class, raised the gate agent's eyebrow. "Seat 2A, the agent asked, scanning her up and down. Kenna nodded, unfazed. The scanner beeped green, but the agent hesitated, muttering into her headset about a flagged profile under 19B. Kenna walked on, her envelope, sealed, critical, tucked in her tote. In seat 2A, Kenna settled in, unnoticed by the man in 2B, who was engrossed in his laptop. The flight attendant skipped her for pre-departure drinks and hot towels, her eyes gliding past Kenna as if she weren't there. Kenna didn't protest. She was observing, testing a system she'd been sent to evaluate. 35 minutes into the flight, turbulence lit the seatbelt sign. Kenna rose to use the lavatory, her movements deliberate. On her return, Sloan approached. "Ma'am, remain seated for the flight. We've had concerns about your movement and demeanor." Kenna's brow lifted. "My demeanor?" Sloan's face was stone. "It's been noted." Kenna sat, her fingers brushing the envelope, her gaze fixed out the window. As the plane descended, an announcement crackled. "All passengers remain seated upon arrival. We have a matter to address." The cabin tensed, eyes darted. Then the officers appeared, zeroing in on Kenna. They pulled her from her seat. No explanation offered. She didn't resist. But as she passed Sloan, their eyes met. In that fleeting glance, Sloan's expression flickered, not with recognition, but with unease. She sensed something, a shift, but it was too late. Kenna was gone, her silence a storm gathering strength. The service corridor smelled of disinfectant and regret. Kenna walked between the officers, her tote slung over her shoulder, the envelope cradled in her hand. They led her to a windowless room, a desk, 2 chairs, a blinking camera. "Wait here," an officer said. Kenna sat, smoothing the envelope's bent corner. 10 minutes later, Darren Vance entered, iPad in hand, his casual air strained. "Miss Brooks, I'm the guest conduct liaison. We had concerns." uncooperative behavior. Movement during secure phases. Kenna's eyebrow arched. Uncooperative. I asked for a towel and used the bathroom. Darren avoided her gaze. Your boarding profile was flagged. The crew thought you were an economy, listed under a voucher. Kenna's voice sharpened. Mistakenly, she pulled a black wallet from her tote, sliding a card across the table. Darren's face tightened as he read, Juno Equity Holdings, fiduciary auditor. I'm not a standard passenger, she said. I'm auditing your airline's compliance for a $4 billion merger. My seat was a field test. You failed. Darren's mouth opened, then closed. You didn't try. Kenna cut in. That's the problem. A knock interrupted. Darren stepped out, returning pale. Will issue an apology. Offer compensation. Vouchers. Lounge access. Kenna stood. I want you to remember this panic. The moment you realized you dismissed someone who holds your future. You didn't just mishandle a customer. You mishandled power. As Kenna exited, a news ticker beached behind a glass wall. Genesis Holdings freezes. 4B. Airline merger. Pending audit. She didn't smile, but her gaze met a stunned administrator's. Her message clear. She was no victim. She was the reckoning. By 9 Silva. 13 mil. Havenport's internal Slack exploded. An audit request hit the risk team, followed by a high-urgency email demanding Flight 2278's logs. In a 19th floor conference room, executives watched security footage. Kenna boarding calmly, then escorted out. Her composure unshaken, no resistance, no incident, said Angela Kim, risk director, her jaw tight. And now she's holding our merger hostage, muttered Joel Berkowitz, VP of Strategy. Harold Vance, legal counsel, entered, a folder marked Genesis Audit Phase 3 in hand. Kenna Brooks isn't just an auditor, he said. She's the trust's oversight appointee. Her signature controls the merger. We dragged her off on camera without checking her profile. Joel swore. Why didn't she say who she was? Harold's voice was grim. She was testing who we'd dismiss without a second thought. Angela stared at the frozen image of Kenna at the gate. Can we recover? Harold's mouth twitched. If we can make an apology louder than the insult. Kenna, now in the terminal's VIP lounge, moved with precision. Sloan, passing by, froze, their eyes locking briefly. Kenna walked on, power in her stride. Inside the lounge, a receptionist greeted her. Miss Brooks, we've prepared a suite. Mr. Bolton from Havenport requests a meeting. Kenna nodded, opening her tablet. The Genesis interface glowed. Logging violations, unverified reclassification, unscanned boarding pass, false security report. She submitted her findings, then agreed to see Lilton. Trevor Ilton, Havenport's COO, entered, his charm faltering. Miss Brooks, I apologize. Our stock's dipping. The merger's at risk. What will undo the freeze? Kenna's gaze was steel. You built a system that assumed I was no one. That's not a glitch. It's your culture. I want a report by noon. Every staff member who touched my file, every override, every protocol used to silence me, flagged in your ethics system. Ulton nodded. We'll make it happen. Kenna stood. No, you'll document that it didn't. She left, her tablet pulsing with the Genesis seal. By 11, a second memo hit Havenport's leadership. Stakeholder-initiated compliance review. Flight 2278. Sloan, in a debrief, twisted her hands, her flight pin gleaming. Footage showed her skipping Kenna, whispering row filler over her headset. I didn't know who she was. She protested. That's the point, said Miriam Gaines. HR, you assumed she didn't belong. Trent, the gate agent, faced a locked terminal, his badge disabled, upstairs. He joined Sloan in scrutiny, their careers unraveling. At 12:41, a third memo demanded a mandatory culture review. Every exclusion from Flight 2278, skipped services, biased remarks, was documented. Kenna, in a lounge overlooking the runway, reviewed the data with her assistant. Michael, the market's linking the 7-8% drop to merger instability, he said. Kenna's voice was quiet. They think I'm a disruption. I'm a mirror. She held off signing the override clause, letting the pressure build. At 3:00, May Havenport's PR team issued a statement. We are reviewing an isolated incident on Flight 2278, committed to inclusive excellence. Kenna read it in her suite, unmoved. They're framing it as an anomaly, Michaels said. That's the playbook. Kenna replied, silence didn't protect me. Now it'll surround them. The video leaked by evening, a bystander's clip of Kenna's removal, her calm searing. It went viral, hashtags trending. Just dragged for flying. Kenna Brooks, silence is power. Media dissected the why, race, class, power, while Kenna stayed silent, her absence amplifying the storm. The next morning, Havenport's leadership went dark. Executives dodging interviews. Kenna, in her hotel, met Michael. They've suspended 2 VPs, rerouted flights, reassigned 50 staff. He reported, they're behind, Kenna said. Let the consequences land. In Charlotte, Leonard Westbrook, Havenport's CEO, stared at a frozen Genesis call. She was on that flight, and no one knew, he hissed. His compliance officer admitted. Her identity was protected. We yanked the merger's pinholder at 11:47 a.m. Kenna entered Hastings and Cole's legal offices. Senior partner James Mercer apologized. What do you need? He asked. Map the system, Kenna said. Every name, checkpoint, override, justification used to silence me. The merger stays frozen until you admit fault publicly. To shareholders, Mercer nodded. That's bold. It's a condition, she replied. Sloan, in HR, faced footage of her actions. I didn't mean to discriminate, she said. You assumed she didn't belong. Her supervisor replied. That compromised a $4 billion deal. By 3:15. Havenport shares dropped another 3%. The viral video fueled outrage, its calm haunting viewers. Kenna, in a Logan lounge, took a call from Genesis's Cameron Ray. You're triggering a capital freeze, he said. I'm waiting to see who stands still, she replied, ending the call. Westbrook called next, accepting her terms. Say my name publicly, she demanded. Not the passenger. Kenna Brooks. He agreed. At 4:12 p.m. Westbrook faced cameras. Yesterday, we failed Kenna Brooks, a stakeholder in our merger and a person deserving dignity. We gave her none. We pay in trust and truth. Kenna watched, her face unreadable. Justice wasn't the speech. It was the reckoning, unfolding. Mom? The ripple stretched beyond that day. Havenport's board restructured. Sloan and Trent were fired, and 50 staff faced retraining. Kenna's conditions became the Brooks Protocol, adopted by 10 airlines, mandating bias training and equity audits. Her name echoed in boardrooms. A warning and a beacon. Sloan, jobless, grappled with her role, later volunteering at a community center, her perspective shifting. Trent retrained as a mechanic, vowing to question assumptions. Kenna returned to O'Hare a week later, boarding 2A without incident. The agent, recognizing her, offered expedited service. Just fair treatment, Kenna said, smiling. In the lounge, a man thanked her, his wife, a witness to her removal. Tell your daughter, Kenna said. Power doesn't shout, it echoes. Her flight was quiet, her presence a statement. The public didn't forget. The video inspired protests, op-eds, and a documentary, The Silent Power, tracing Kenna's impact. A Chicago student, moved by her calm, studied law, citing Kenna's stand. An airline worker, shamed by the incident, championed equity reforms. Genesis, under Kenna's oversight, enforced stricter compliance, reshaping aviation's culture. Kenna, now a consultant, spoke at conferences. Her story, a case study in systemic change. She kept the envelope unopened, a reminder of the day silence spoke. Havenport recovered, but its culture bore her mark. Quarterly audits, mandatory training, a legacy of accountability. This story, ignited by an emotional clash of prejudice and power, asks us to confront our assumptions. When have we judged without knowing? When have we stayed silent when we should have acted? Kenna's composure, a mirror to a flawed system, reminds us that dignity doesn't need to shout. It reshapes the world in its echo. What would you have done in Kenna's place? Could you have stayed silent, letting the system indict itself? Share your thoughts. For every dismissal hides a story. Every silence, a reckoning, and every moment a chance to change what's broken.